Assalamu alaikum. If you got 2 more minutes, I know everybody complained about shortage of time. If you got 2 more minutes, what you will think of telling us?
Go ahead, say it. I want to hear what Professor Dr. Bilal was going to say with 2 more minutes. I'd like to hear what Dr. Bilal was going to say with 2 more minutes.
That seems like a violation of the Aladdin rules. Like you can't use the 3 wishes to wish for more wishes. I'm just gonna throw that out there. But I like how you did that. If I had had 2 more minutes, I would have elaborated not just on the relationship between ethics and spirituality, but how in the Prophet's own life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but how both were rooted in an understanding of what a human being actually is. That they're both rooted in Islamic humanism, which is a further reflection on that notion that the Quran never uses Allah yuhib except with reference to human beings, and also that the Quran describes the creation of the human being as completely different from everything else in creation. It's not that إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. It's not an act of speech. He creates with his own 2 hands and then breathes of his own breath into the form of Adam to animate him. So he's saying that humanity has a special station. You are made with a caress and you are animated with the kiss of life. Love is implicit in the relationship between the human being and the divine presence. And my own hypothesis about this, and this is what I think really drives the deep love for humanity that the Prophet ﷺ had, is that the only reason that justifies creating something so disobedient as a human being is that it is the condition through which God's love can become manifest in the universe. Because it's beneath God's dignity to love something that's forced to obey him. So he creates a thing that has free will, so that he creates a thing that can turn towards him, so that he can have something that's worthy of his love.
You want to say the 2 minutes? We got already. May I say what I would have said in 2 minutes? My passion in life, in the community, is to promote unity as much as possible. And how the Prophet ﷺ was able to unite the people with the blessings of God. لو أنفقت ما في الأرض جميعا ما ألفت بين قلوب. With the blessings of God, this is something we all should look at, and we owe it to our children, we owe it to our future generations, our organizations. Maybe I would like to add one more 8th thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves in the Quran. He loves those who strive together, كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْصُوصٌ, that they are always united as one hand. Keep that in mind. Don't let anything separate us as a community, regardless if it's ethnicity, financial status, educational status, religious commitment. This is one of the biggest things that's dividing our community, how committed we are to our faith. So unity is something that I would like to impress on.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Imagine if you were speaking to a room full of Republicans or Democrats. That's true. Or just my own personal favorite, or a room full of police officers. And you had to convey to them something about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that they should take as a general principle or principles and apply in their actions, their behaviors, their life's work, if you will. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So you said, imagine you're in a room full of Republicans, and I said, well, there's another question I'm going to sit out. And then you said police officers. And طيب, when it comes to the divisions in our country, we have to, and also the divisions within Islam, and the otherizing that I alluded to at the end of what I was saying, we have to avoid monolithic paintings, broad brush paintings of this group and that group. If we've learned anything in the past 20 years in our experience with Islamic thought, it's that we need to be much more rigorous as far as listening and understanding and analysis. So I wouldn't want to paint all Republicans with one broad brush. There is an archetype. Many of us are very familiar with what that archetype and what those inclinations are. But still, it's important to avoid those things. طيب. But that said, allowing ourselves to assume an archetype, the first thing I would speak about would be, or present that I think would be useful of the character of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, is his sidq, his honesty. And being honest enough to listen and understand, and being honest enough to consider what is equitable, consider what is fair, and consider what is just, and what is best for the people here in our society and our country, and that's everyone. That's everybody. That's people who are in the 1%, as it were, and on down, all the way to the people who are on Skid Row. All of them are our nation. And it is the way of a leader to consider every single member of the flock, not just the popular ones, not just the ones who look like us, not just the ones who think like us or vote like us or, smoke the same cigarettes as me. As the Rolling Stones say, he can't be a man because he doesn't smoke the same cigarettes as me, right? It's that ability also you need honesty in order to have empathy. Moving to the other side, you've thrown in with the Republicans, assuming that all police officers are Republicans, which is probably a good bet if I was a betting man. My cousin, who I haven't seen since we were both teenagers, is a LAPD officer, and I haven't sort of met him since I got back here. We'll see how that goes. But I would say courage, the shuja'ah of the Prophet ﷺ is what I would present, because considering what is fair, or the definition of to serve and protect every single person within my jurisdiction, regardless of whether they look like me or they don't look like me, requires courage. To not make assumptions about who another person is, about what they must be doing, or about the value of their privacy. The value, you take a young man, I don't care where he comes from or who he is a young man, and he is new to this world. And if we lower our standards because of assumptions that we've made about this person, and we go ahead and make an arrest, shake them down, pull them over, make a big issue out of it, and God forbid, put them on their stomach on the floor, that young man will never ever be the same again. Once you've had one brush with being arrested, when we were younger, we used to be proud of how many times we got arrested, right? But it's nothing to be proud of. Once you have one brush, there are assumptions about values, assumptions about self-worth, that will never be the same again. And oftentimes for many people, because maybe they don't have the same luxury or space to breathe that we do, they don't have the wherewithal to process that in a way that maintains their self-worth, right? It will never be the same again. Just like many people from our community know what it's like to get a visit in the workplace, right, from authorities, and the damage that that does to one's career. It takes courage to put yourself in someone else's shoes. It takes courage to sign up for a dangerous job and then present myself to that danger, right? Because my job is to serve and protect. I put myself in danger in order to make sure that everybody's safe, right? And that's every member of the flock, and that comes back to leadership, and that applies to our masajid. If you're put into a position of leadership in these Muslim communities, these mosque communities, your responsibility is not just to your friends, not just to the people that you know, but to every member of the flock, even the unpopular ones, even the troublemakers, even all the way across. That's leadership. That's my answer that was too long, right, to that question. I'm working on it.
I will tell the Republicans that Prophet Muhammad was not a Democrat. And I'll tell the Democrats that Prophet Muhammad was not a Democrat.
Bismillah ar-Rahim. Thank you to our beloved speakers and teachers and the organizers for such a beautiful, illuminating conference. If I may, I think arguably the greatest challenge that we have in this country and potentially the West is the crisis of connection. You know, loneliness has become an epidemic. People are starving for community, and we see nothing but broken communities or haphazard communities. And I think many a times, or potentially when we speak of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we can speak about him and his character and how he dealt with others and forget that that happened in a community. And so my question is, if you had to choose 1 to 5, because those are two numbers that we like in Islam, 1 to 5 principles, themes that as we build communities, things that we have to touch upon in every khutbah, in every lecture, in every gathering, what would those 5 principles be through the prophetic example of building and developing communities and connection?
For me, the answer to the question goes back to what I said before. The Prophet ﷺ said that you will not enter the garden until you have believed, and you will not have believed until you have loved one another. Okay? Hatta tahabu is the way that he ends it. Yeah. So when he says that, what he's telling us is that the doors to the garden are closed to us unless we love one another. Then he continues. He says, shall I tell you a thing that if you did it, you would love one another? So he's given us the answer. He says, spread peace. By the one who holds my soul in his hands, you will not spread peace until you are merciful. Then they said, messenger of God, we are merciful. They had the nerve to talk back. And he said, it is not mercy amongst yourselves, rather it is mercy in general, it is mercy in general, it is mercy in general. He repeated it 3 times. So for me, it's actually understanding that without fundamental love for humanity, the doors to the garden are closed to you. That needs to be the sum and substance of every single speech that comes from any Islamic authority in any place and in any time. Because when you have that fundamental love for humanity and you understand that every person that you find, no matter what condition you find them in, represents the highest possible investment of God's Most High. He created that disobedient person so that something worthy of his love would come into the universe. So if he invests that much in a human being, then why can't we invest that much in human beings? Why can't we love one another in spite of our differences? Why can't we try to overcome, the hatred and prejudice that the shaitan sows to keep us separate? God says in the Quran over and over again that the shaitan is weak. He only fights us with weapons that we give to him. And the principal one is that we divide ourselves and we create divisions and we allow enmity to be spread amongst us very easily. And I'm gonna tell you, like this, look, I was stopped by the cops 17 times just between my junior and senior years. Okay, the hairs on the back of my neck always, stand up. I've been the victim of systematic American racism from the time I was a child. My father had a 6th grade education. But I'll be honest, I never experienced people that were more racist towards me than I experienced in the American Muslim community. Okay, so I don't want to hear, that we're this voice for good and positive change, when our house ain't even clean. We don't even take care of ourselves. Secure your own mask before assisting others. If you really take this message of Islam seriously, then value every single human being.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Bilal. Barakallahu feekum. Subhanallah, one of the scholars that I studied with in the Minor Atlas Mountains, Shaykh Muhammad al-Ghali al-Dadasi, really struck me once in one of his khutab. He said about this hadith, he said that salam that we should be spreading amongst one another is salamat al-sadr, peace of heart, having a big enough breast to embrace another person. The problem of racism in our own masajid, which is outrageous, it's a problem of listening. We say that Islam teaches, we say, and we reduce our Islamic teachings to, we've been taught that every single believer is like the teeth of a comb. They are all equal, right? We can put that on a bumper sticker. But how is it applied? We all assume, or at least those who, look like me, or I'll speak for myself, we can easily assume that we're not lynching people, we're not wearing hoods, we must not be racist, because I don't believe in that. But ihsan is to listen and pay attention and let other people do the talking. Let other people tell of their experience. In my sojourn, in order to get here to this position, which I'm incredibly grateful for here in Southern California, I stayed in an empty house that a brother and his family had moved out of, and it was in the suburbs. And I had actually been staying also in an empty house, but it was a shotgun house in Old Memphis, where there was this police light on the corner that was so blue and so strong that it filled the entire little shotgun house with a bright blue pulsating light that gave you a headache. How could you sleep at night? And the assumption is that that is there to protect people and make the neighborhood safe because there's cameras and what have you. But what is that doing to everyone who lived on each of those 4 corners? They have to get up early and go to work in the morning. And this is hitting their heads and illuminating their whole house in an immense fashion. Many of us, we don't experience what it's like to live in those circumstances. Tayyib. Then there was an empty house in the suburbs that someone had moved to a bigger house. And so they said, you can stay here. I stayed there, and I come from an American Muslim community background. And so back in the day, we rolled heavy and hot. And so I'm there, and I feel responsibility for the house, and somebody comes in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m. And so this is my brother's house. So I showed up like an American Muslim, and the brother was very, very upset. He said, we have people around here with guns and badges to protect us. We don't need anyone else protecting us. And I said, I'm just looking out for your house. I have no idea who's in here walking around downstairs. And I said to him, because he'd just given me a lecture the day before about how he's not racist, and he had discovered all of these things and nuances. And I said, do me a favor, don't say that to any of the other brothers in the community. We have people with guns and badges who are here to protect us and keep us safe, because that's not what those guns and badges mean in other parts of the community. I end up going on too long, but you did ask the question about what are the points, and in response to your text the other day, I wrote down a number of points. Forgive me. But a 5-year game plan for a healthier Muslim community 5 years from now. Points that we should be emphasizing and themes that we should emphasize in our khutab, in our community. The first is being Adami, just being a human being. Our daughters, Allah protect them. A woman may not wear hijab. Someone may not be in the front row of prayer, may not be doing all of these outward things, but if we can at least teach our kids how to be human beings, there's hope for the future. Because there's a lot of robots out there who don't know how to be human beings, but everything looks the part. Number 2, critical thinking. Critical thinking is at an all-time low in the Muslim community in North America, right? And in the American community in general as well. Self-awareness, right? Self-awareness. مَنْ عَرَفَ نَفْسَهُ عَرَفَ رَبَّهُ. Right? So being aware of yourself, aware of the things that you say, aware of the things that you think, aware of what you need. Okay? Respecting the dignity of all persons, regardless. Number 5, having goals and team alignment in common and as general objectives. Pride in teamwork. 7, empathy for the suffering of others who are not like us. And 8, being attuned to the nuances behind the suffering of others. 9, standing up to bullies in the community, which is something that is not done here in North America in these 6 years that I've been here. 10, finding one's own serenity and fulfillment in the adoration of Allah. 11, public education of Muhammadan reality without speaking, right? Let people know Muhammad through you and your conduct and your character and the way that you treat them. 12, preserving fitrah in all people in society. 13, being aware of communal obligations, furud kifaiya, to remove obstacles from people's paths toward those self-realization needs that Maslow talks about in his hierarchy, right? Our activism is removing something harmful in someone's path to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that space that you lay open for them through your efforts, they may use it to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they may use it for something else, right? But you have your relationship and why you do things, and other people have theirs. And finally, respect for professional expertise as an expression of hikmah and ihsan. Those are some of the prescriptions I think we could benefit from in our khutab in the next 5 years and our public addresses. Asif, forgive me.
I'll add 2 points as they walk into the stage. Please feel free to come. From the practical teachings of the Prophet ﷺ to fight those individualistic tendencies that we have in our community and isolate ourselves. Number 1, the Prophet ﷺ said it's for your own benefit to be among the community, because the shaitan will attack you when you're alone, just like the wolf will attack the sheep by itself. And the other beautiful hadith, because a lot of people like to be isolated because they are fearful of the harm that could happen to them from the community or from the gatherings. So Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, the believer who lives among the people and practice patience when he faces harm is better than the believer who isolates himself and chooses not to deal with this harm. So these 2 things, practical, straightforward applications and advice from the Prophet ﷺ can help us as well.
I want to add just 10 seconds. Nothing that the American Muslims conceive will be successful unless the women find their place in it. Nothing that the American Muslims conceive will be successful unless the women find their place in it. God himself will forbid any success in your affairs when you abuse those that share his name, Ar-Rahim, through their possession of a womb. And it's one of the greatest tragedies of the American Muslim community that we have systematically shut down access to female scholarly excellence, because the traditional route for female piety within the religion is through scholarship and spirituality, since there are certain ritual roles which are prescribed for men, but there are no limits on scholarly or spiritual achievements that are closed to women and open to men. So as long as we neglect our women's spiritual education, as well as their opportunity to provide scholarly leadership, ain't no good gonna come out of anything we do, period.